Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Reviews where today we're going to be checking out the entirety of an album from an act named Winchester 7 and the Runners titled The Waking Giant. And if we switch over to here, at the time of me reviewing this, there's currently already a version of this on Bandcamp. It's titled The Waking Giant of Echo's Rest. Apparently through Spotify and stuff like that, the digital streaming platforms, they're going to be releasing this album as just The Waking Giant if I'm not mistaken. So that's why I'm going with this for the title of this album. It's got a total of 9 tracks, so we're going to listen through each of them from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. We'll go to the album art here as well. This on The Waking Giant. And it's worth noting that I have listened to Winchester 7 and the Runners before, and I've typically enjoyed my time with them, so it'd be great to hear more. So without further ado, 2 feet on the ground, let's go. I'm going to turn it down a little bit in the headphones. It's quite loud at the moment. How do I describe it? I like what's going on with the guitar solo phrasing. I think the vocals themselves individually within the mix, they sound nice. We've got some interesting melodies here, and the choruses make sense for the functionality, the implied functionality there. I can hear ukulele on one side, and I can hear the guitar and the bass, and the kick is just kind of kicking, punching its way through the mix. It's a very loud mix. I'm not sure if all the elements are getting a fair shake within it, but at the same time, this could have been the aesthetic we wanted. I mean, I can't tell if that's I don't think that's what I'm listening to it through, pushing the volume like that. Yeah, I've got the volume at 100%, so I think it should be okay, and I don't have the ability to bass boost or anything like that as if that would be helpful in any way, shape, or form. I think if I were to talk about what I think 2 Feet on the Ground is about, it's about, I got parts of the lyrics, I didn't get all of them through clearly. But I think part of the track is talking about having 2 feet on the ground and making it across the finish line. So I'm wondering if they're trying to stay grounded in order to be able to get to where they need to go and it's not being carried off by something. I just didn't get enough of the rest of the lyrics through clearly on the first listen to be able to sort of ascertain more than that. I think part of that, as I mentioned when I was listening through it, is that the mix is very, very tight. I understand why we might have put the vocals there. We were doing some really cool stuff. Like there was some reverse takes with the vocals in the second half of each chorus or something like that, or bridge section there. And then we'd kind of go into it like that. I thought that was dope. And I appreciate the ideas with the interesting, really bright, charming major and minor chords on the ukulele. The guitar solo phrasing with the pentatonics and the lead distortion part was cool. I thought that the drums, the interesting that kind of groove we had the entire time, and the percussion was captivating as well. It had an interesting sort of flow to it and a nice consistency to it. It was just that I think we needed a bit more difference with the compression. I'm wondering if it was overcompressed. Given that this is the release before the album, I'm wondering if the entire album has been mastered like this. If that is the case, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things go. But aside from the maybe potential overcompression, I do think within that grasp, things have been leveled well. So I'm just going to quickly listen outside of this to make sure. No, so I checked in another software as well. Like I checked the Windows Media Player and it's the exact same. So that's a little bit of a shame. But moving on from that, I think that the vocal performance was competent there. We had a great sound to the vocals. And I think we'll continue with Selling the Apocalypse, track number 2, though. Might just be that we're quite loud in the headphones.
When the planets align, LA is gonna shake, and the date of our demise, it will be on New Year's Day. Well, the world won't end tomorrow,
The future left borrow is fading away. I like this. I can hear the vocals through more clearly on this one. There's just a bit of a difference between the vocals and the fuzzy guitars on the side. Things seem a little bit better balanced. And there's multiple vocals, aren't there? Like, there's vocal harmonies as well. I appreciate the color. There's one in a lower range. And the way, that upper part as well as the tail is kind of cool. And trade off the lead solo. Oh, double chorus with some brass. I better save the date, right? And we've got like a radio filter on the vocals on the left side as well, which is an interesting new introduction. Oh, panning from left to right. Nice. So that was rock and roll. I dig that. I think I prefer that track to the original. I get more of a feel for what the song was about. So it was about like fear mongering and stuff like that, and trying to sort of just like come to terms with the fact that we don't have a guaranteed future. Is it related to 2 Feet on the Ground in a sense that like we're trying to stay grounded in order to get to the finish line, and then with this one we're trying not to get overwhelmed and just try not to take our futures for granted and such? Is there a common connection here? Is the Waking Giant the planet? Is that it? I'm not sure. I just, 'cause I'm looking at the artwork and the beautiful kind of nature and everything like that, I'm wondering if that's the case. But either way, I think that, again, there were some wonderful vocal melodies and harmonies in the chorus sections as well as in the verse parts. I could hear them a bit more clearly. I appreciate the fuzziness of the distorted guitars or overdriven guitars on the sides there, as well as a really kind of fuzzy guitar solo in the center field. Again, working those pentatonics and some of those potential blues scale notes there. Working with major and minors, again, it was very rock and roll there. The drums, driving forward with the quarter and eighth note accents with occasional 16th potentially. But outside of the additional notes about the bass being just really loyal to those root notes and just pulling forward, I have to give a shout out to the brass. I thought it was a nice way to develop that second time of the chorus that we had there. We had a two hook kind of thing, A and B, and then like that second time we had some brasses in the sides. And it's kind of brightened it up, and that is a sense of further instrumental development there that I really appreciated there. The motif behind it sounded a bit more sort of like, hey, let's not lose this opportunity, It sounded a little bit more upbeat due to a lack of extended complexity with the harmonies. And ultimately, I think just with slightly more dynamic range in this one, you got more of a feel of the individual components within this. And again, I like the fact we had the vocals going from left to right. It's interesting to have the panning there. I think it's an intriguing story. It almost feels like the songs are too short, and that's a massive compliment, It makes me wonder whether we're going to continue to have a solo focus on the guitars. I did enjoy the ukulele in the first track, though. That was a nice kind of fresh response. But we've got On the Pipeline, track number 3. Keys? Is there a different type of percussion there, like a hand drum or something like that, or a cajon or something like that? There's a kind of a thud sound that I kind of appreciate there. It's just not something I've been familiar with so far on the album. So we're just kind of vibing with the instrumental section here. Was there like an actual dedicated instrument, like solo instrument as an alternate to the vocals in there? Let's go, whoa, there's different layers going on there. I can appreciate that it's deep. Solving all the problems artificially in pipelines. That was a kind of psychedelic experience there. I appreciate those kind of synthy lead woodwind things that we had. And do you remember about the 1 minute 30 mark I was talking about? Wondering if I was hearing a lead. There was like a subtle sub layer there, kind of harmonizing along some of the lead lines that were in the chorus section. So that's kind of dope. We did have synth leads and some key bits, interesting little melody passages there. Some new instrumental textures in this track that we haven't necessarily had before. That made it a little bit more sort of peppy and fun and interesting to listen to. And I hope that we did continue to add new sort of angles with each song we go across. It gave it a weird sense of innocence, I suppose. I'm not sure about this track. There's a way we're trying to do our vocals that was similar to how we had it on 2 Feet on the Ground. I think when there's less of a pad-like sort of effect to it, when sort of things are a bit more forceful, you get a bit more of that grit, and it pushes through the mix a little bit more in this album. And I just don't think I got enough of the verses to go much more than the chorus. But the chorus, with what I gathered about like using like technology to solve our problems, is like artificially and stuff like that, and with the pipeline, on the pipeline, I suppose with oil, is it basically talking about how we solve our problems, or like the best way to do it, or maybe the folly of trying to do things with measures that we can't completely control or necessarily even understand? Is that it? I just feel like I'm missing crucial information. I am listening intently to it. I'm trying to sort of take everything in. I thought that the guitar tones, again with distortion overdrive there, the fizzy components there, bit of raunchiness to it. The drums, again, mixing with some snare and kick patterns, as well as some tom parts. There were fills in there as well, which is kind of cool. And again, the combination of those mid to higher range synth parts there as a new instrumental part made the track more interesting to listen through. We had breaks and we paused, and we had the kind of crazy sort of flurry of different string components at the end bit that I wasn't expecting there. It kind of made me wonder whether that was the wind of change coming through or something like that. Which incidentally, we're talking about Scared of Changing, track number 4. I wonder if that is like a little bit of a warning in advance. Did you hear that cool response that we had there from it with those synth strings, or maybe the strings there? How they were in that gap between vocal lines and the chorus? I like that. I like that trade-off. It's cool, man. So with this one, are we discussing how we feel about change and realizing that change might not be with the person they want it to be with, and being afraid or unsure about how to do it, go through that on their own? Bit of flanging or phasing there as well. That's kind of dope. Bit more intense with those effects now, those oscillations. And like those little flutters between the sides of the stereo field, we're clearly putting effort in with the organs and such, let alone the rest of the instruments and the production stuff. We're trying to make it an interesting experience for the listener, and I think we understand that if we have too much of something, it can become a little bit sort of like a little bit overplayed. So adjustments to the way instruments are heard in the stereo field as well as in the frequency spectrum there, allowing ourselves to play around with flanging and phasing and stuff like that for sections where there's pauses, and to maybe continue with that throughout as an extra bit of layering and intensity. It's smart.
And change is all I can see. And change is all around me. But I don't know what I would do if changing means we're changing without. Change is all I can see.
Is this some rotary reverb or something like that as well?
Washes around me, and I don't want something new. No, all I need is to
Oh. I really enjoy this track. I mean, I think that Scared of Changing, to me at least, with the way I could follow along with the vocals, again, the vocals were more present because they were along that lower range there. I could hear the lyrics clearly there. They were fairly easy to understand, like just without... They were fairly accessible, you know. You get to the end of the track and they've got these... all they can see is change. And they don't know if they can do it along, and they're scared of losing that person because they're changing. And then I think at the end they just kind of give into that and go like, "Long, we can just change together and make this work." And I think that's a beautiful sentiment there, with the strings crescendoing there within a mid to higher range there, glowing as if we've, because to be fair, because we have achieved something really positive, you know, that epiphany, that realization that it's better to try and adapt rather than to sort of stay stuck in your ways, I suppose, you know, depending on the situation. And just as a general comment, as I understand it, rather, the fear cannot necessarily be healthy when it's self-depending on a situation. But it's nice to hear us have this sort of realization mid-album there. I'm wondering if it is related to the previous tracks, whether we've had previous thoughts that are being challenged up until this point, and now for the rest of the album we're going to continue to explore those. But I think the use of flanging and filtering, almost, I would sort of describe that as processing these thoughts and feelings and sounds and stuff like that out loud. It's almost like we're going through these calculations and going back and forth on things. And like the synthetic elements, like maybe like we're looking at getting with the times in the new future and the modern environment, stuff like that, if that's the case. I just think there's indications with not only the lyrics and also the brightness of the endpoint, where we sort of celebrate almost coming to the terms of the understanding that we need to change. There's a brightness to the fact that we there's an understanding. There's an indication from the instruments within the piece that the future is coming and it's already here. So I dig it. I think that the story is cool. I thought that the guitar, bass, drum performance, as well as the strings that we had occasionally, were really pretty. And I could. This is more of a single there, a little bit less kind of raucous than previous tracks, a little bit softer in its approach there. Just a lot of smoother textures within that. You know, like with the chord choices and stuff like that as well. I kind of dig it. It's a nice foil to some of the other stuff we've had, even though we haven't gotten too heavy with things. But we've got track number 5, Stories to Tell. So, like, is there a lady singer? Because in the previous track we talked about we were scared of changing. We sort of said we'd change with them, but now the lady is the one singing with us as if we're working on this together. Is that the kind of effect we're going for? Interesting bluesy phrasings here. Okay, so like I've really not said a lot with this track so far, primarily because I just wanted to sort of absorb it here. There's a lot going on with the ukuleles, the guitar bass, the synth pattern as well. There, the synth instruments there. The lady vocals in here having their own verse. I'm not sure if they're a part of the Winchester 7 Runners troupe typically, but either way, it's still cool. It's nice to have that focus talking about how, they talk about how nobody's going to be able to catch us. We've made the changes we need, the moves we need in order to get ourselves in a position where we're going to be able to move ahead and sort of do what we need to. We're kind of trying to make sure that, again, as the title says, we have stories to tell, trying to find a way of pursuing adventure despite the adversities potentially presented. So I think the mistiness of it, combined with, again, just the magic of all the various layers and how unpredictable they are, both in the way they're going to be layered and kind of like it seems like you're being there's a loop of being introduced to various textures because some will overlap others in a way that you wouldn't necessarily expect. But I also kind of appreciate maybe the music is almost meant to overwhelm you with that understanding that you really can go out there and do something special. It's kind of like a sea of music. The vocals from the male and the female, like there's like a radio filter or something like that on the guy vocals. The lady vocals simmer in the higher to mid end there, and a similar phrasing, a similar position in the frequency spectrum as some of those synth and guitar layers. It's really like this kind of effervescent essence of different sort of bits of music surrounding you in different layers there. The only thing I'd say is I wish I had a clearer understanding of what was being said. Like sometimes I get it, but I feel like I'm missing certain words. Like a rebel yell? I mean, there's such an ominous attribute to assign to the way those synth and bassy components at the end of the track, We finish on that minor chord, and it's almost like, even though we're trying to sort of like have stories to tell, it's not a necessarily happy reason for needing to do so. Like there's a line as well, like everyone gets there as in the end. Almost like we've kind of consigned ourselves to eventually meeting our demise and maybe not getting everything we need to done or want to done. So we're just gonna like basically put our fingers up and basically get out there and just do what we can, give a rebel yell if I heard that correctly, and just try and make the most of it regardless. Kind of talking about like maybe what we're talking about with selling the apocalypse, where like we're trying to sort of reason with people, hey, we shouldn't be giving away our time like this, and eventually stories to tell us, oh well, it is already too late, so we've just got to continue to just make the most of it as we can. So I think that the use of occasional guitar leads there, the synths, the fuzziness there, the danger presented in a lot of the different components, how they melded and amalgamated within this track, it demonstrated a sense of almost an antagonism there, but it was like also really soothing sounding. I think the consistency of a lot of the components there, when now they're presented with like a lack of change in the dynamics or perceived loudness with the track, indicates this is sort of like a track you kind of get lost in and just kind of nod your head to and appreciate. Scared of Changing was more sort of like therapeutic. Stories to Tell was more kind of grounded in the sense that I think that we were trying to sort of say, hey, look, seriously, just even though things seem hopeless, we got to keep moving forward. And I think that was part of the reason potentially for having the lady, if they were moving on from that previous track, was that they've decided to change together and they just want to make their lives better whilst they can. So again, I still think the mix is a bit tight there. There's not as much dynamic range as I want to. The words aren't always coming through as clearly, but that's okay. We've got Dreaming in Color, track number 6. Good use of fading in though. Nice use of automation on the volume. That was pretty. Sorry to interrupt the chorus or the bridge. I love that chord change, that da-da-bum, bum, 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 bum. That major triad we had there was just a lovely turn there. What I like is that we're stacking the vocals again we've done this in previous tracks, but just the simplicity of having a higher and a lower, just gives great presence to the singing in those parts there. But it's also interesting because we have these picked notes that aren't necessarily subtle on the guitars there, and we simultaneously managed to blend that with the bass and the drums in a way where, and those little pluck 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 plucks as well as a call and response. I dig it. blood red moon I was born under, out in the pouring rain. It's interesting imagery, to be fair, you know.
These days can be blinding, like 1,000 suns all shining, and it's getting very hard to find the silver lining. It's getting so hard to take. Now take it to that much place.
Did it just get wider in the mix? I'm not upset about that. Nice little lead guitar riff on the right as well to finish off. Sick. I enjoyed Dreaming in Color. I could kind of understand where we were coming from in the story, the lyric there. We were discussing how I think in real life, quote unquote, in the verses, we were not feeling particularly positive about the situation where like we felt like we were losing hope, even though we were trying to make the most of it, you know, as per stories to tell and stuff like that. But I liked how after, you know, we discussed those things, not necessarily being particularly positive, you know, that potentially being an understatement, we then go into the chorus where we dream in color, and it's almost like we're finding a mental escape from the situation we're in. Maybe it's that we think things can improve, but maybe it's also just a coping mechanism. But either way, it's just kind of duality of this track, going between reality versus the world that we create there. And a little plink plink plonk synths with an interesting tone that I don't think we've had previously so far this album. They're just fun to listen to, you know. They highlight parts of the you know, triads involved in the chords and just create a nice little sort of call and response for what the vocals are doing. But it's also just the lead guitars there with the simmering reverb and sort of just crispy textures there, the bass and the drums, kind of nice, constant, old reliables. And it's just, we've got the bases covered at this point. I think any track where I can hear the vocals clearly, and I know I've gone on about this at this point, but like any of the tracks where I hear the vocals clearly, they've basically smashed it, I think, at this point. I still think the songs where I couldn't have heard the vocals clearly sound good. It's just, I just feel like I'm missing context. But Dreaming in Color itself, I could kind of understand what was going on there. I thought it was really interesting how, as at the end of the track, things got a little bit wider in the stereo field. We might have even been having some like talking on the sides before we had things kind of go further with like the ukulele or some extra guitar parts there. And it was just huge sounding, dude. But like, honestly, like for the most part, I'm really happy with this album so far. It's an interesting piece. It'd be interesting to talk about it at the end. Once I get a sort of like general feel for it, we've got this Dissociation. The slap back echo to the drums, as well as the vocals for a lot of this album, to be fair.
Well, the moon is shining down, lights are shining bright. The band will keep on playing into the night. You slip through the party with your domino on. The diamonds in the bowl soon will be gone. It's like watching a movie where you're in the star roll. You see yourself moving across the floor. You step to the side, your hands upon your hips. You take it on stride and cannot miss. And you've never felt so alive.
Is this an electronic drum kit? This sounds different to the previous kit. I could be wrong.
Oh, so free. Come on, baby, close your eyes. Dissociate me.
It's just a little bit rounded in that low end, you know, with those kicks.
She's got her hands on the wheel. You're running them red lights, making a getaway in the dead of night. You go hard round the corner with the radio on. The only consequence in the mirror soon is gone. It's like watching a movie where you're in the star roll. You see your foot press down, the pedal to the floor. The motor hums way
It's an interesting combination of the electronic drums with the guitars, the fuzzy guitars, things like going very kind of analog with it. Okay, cool response. Good job having a lead over top. Hang on a minute, we had that before. We had that at the end of Scared of Changing or On the Pipeline, wasn't it? Is this us disassociating? I think that's the first time I've ever listened to a piece of music that sounds like a horror movie. It's that last part there with a minute and a half of the strings devolving into that fragmented, detuned, like kind of, it had like fiddles and like a kind of a catchy song, but it almost sounded a little bit unsettling, right? Were we talking about disassociation in the sense of someone else, and then that string part there is eventually getting into that point where we then go and start imagining that we completely lose sense of reality? I thought that it was such a catchy track though for the first 3.5 minutes though. There's a really catchy synth lead there with an interesting eighth note pattern there, which segged really nicely with those really tight kick and snare samples with the cymbals as well. The other kind of fuzzy guitar parts, either the chords or the lead parts we had later on, developing or niching on top of the vocals in like the 3-minute mark or whatever, were really sick. And it's just, I just thought it was a fun sort of structural thing to add that part at the end for like the last minute or so, where you have the sort of like very sort of uncomfortable sounding string harmonies portamentoing to that slow eventual clicking tick-tocking of the clock. But excellent effort, like genuinely. That was a plot twist. Like they've been hinting at previous parts of this that would be going probably for a bit more of a extensive outro. That being the last track on the album, to be fair, like on the Bandcamp version. We do have 2 more songs today, though. We have Not Dead Yet, which is I'm not sure how to feel about that. Do I talk about Dissociation as the last track with Not Dead Yet being extras? Oh, Not Dead Yet is a cover of a Lord Huron song. We'll continue. Gorgeous. That glissando with the keys that we had then was classy as hell, man, going on the honky tonk like that. Slick, really good cover.
There's a stranger in my eyes again. I swear to God, I don't know him. You're tired of me, I'm tired of you. So turn around and leave it to myself. You got holes in your clothes and blues on your breath. Look like hell and you smell like death. I've been out way too long, heading right for the edge. If she asks about me, tell her I'm not dead.
What does that effect on the guitars? It's like a tremolo or vibrato or something like that, but just the way it comes in and out, like it makes that guitar riff just stand out and be a little more unique in the arrangement. It's something we haven't really had an effect for yet. We might have had it in previous tracks, but not this one. But we've got a consistency of the guitar, bass, and drum tones with the vocals and the upper parts there. Even if there's quite a lot going on within those individual components, it's just nice to have a bit of change there with the effects.
You got holes in your clothes and blues on your breath. Look like hell and you smell like death.
I want to fade out. Wasn't expecting the ukulele to fade out. What I like about this album is the presence of the ukulele as an instrument. I think that ukuleles are wonderful. They have such a charming tone to them. But you can also do some really crazy creative stuff, both as a lead instrument on a ukulele, especially if you get some distortion on that and a bit of effects, like some delay reverb or some like get some chorus or something. But even just as a strummed instrument, it doesn't need to always be somewhere over the rainbow, right? Like the grade 8 stuff for ukulele, for example, one of the tracks is Holier Than Thou by Metallica is a grade 8 ukulele song. You can do all sorts of genres of ukulele, but what I like about this track is he just finishes it with it. It's a nice clean foil for a lot of what's going on with those guitar tracks where they're soaked in reverb, or they've got the fuzzy overdrive or distortion or whatever, or they've got a little bit of kind of, again, rotary reverb, or they've got the tremolo stuff going on. Then just they've got something occurring, and the ukulele is usually always more clean. As I like the contrast there between the string parts. The vocals were nice and tight with this version. I'm wondering if they recorded this separate to the tracks within the first 7 of the album. The mixing in this was I'm really happy with how the vocals and everything else were layered, including the harmonized parts. The guitars were nice and wide, and the headphones there, the bass and drums nicely niched as well. The drums were really tight. I appreciate the attention to detail with the quarters, eighths, and sixteenths there. And ultimately, it was catchy as hell. There was lots of room to appreciate the instrumental performance there. I don't really think there was a note out of place. It was just tight. I think it was a really fitting tribute to the Lord Huron song that the band that they originally made, Not Dead Yet. And what do I think it's about? I think it's about someone who is basically on, like, they've been through a whole heap of hell, but they're still kind of fighting. I reckon that's what it's about. Even though you've been through a whole lot of stuff, you're still not dead yet. You still got push in you. You're still gonna keep going forward, you know. Or maybe it's like celebrating the imperfections, you know. Like you may not like be perfect, but you're still still equally worth, being celebrating or like making the most of stuff. I could have thoroughly misinterpreted though. Hopefully I'm not too far off. We've got Not Find Me a Place, track number 9. It's tied again.
I'm gonna find me a place where I call it home. Built to suit my taste as through the years they grow. There'll be a wide open space for my mind to roam, where I'll recreate all that I have known. Now they have crossed my mind at the back of every line.
Great adjustment and chord progression.
Things that take time and the blues. I've had mine. Now the happiness I find in the sweet by and by shall serve to remind of how hard I tried.
An interesting entrance. And the honky tonk keys. I feel bad for not pausing and talking about stuff as you go through. I feel like we've got all the boxes ticked within this. He's trying to find a place where they can find peace. And I think when you think about what we've talked about within this album, it makes sense. We'll talk about it more at the end, but we've got that warbly guitar again. And we've got organs as well as keys in that one. Crazy, man. I wasn't expecting there to be organs and keys. I could definitely hear the honky tonk keys and a bra 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 with the grace notes and the legato phrasings and stuff like that, walking across the bluesy and like it was a fun track, this one. I thought Find Me a Place was a little more upbeat than a lot of the previous tracks we've had in this. We had a couple of different chord progressions that they never got too sort of dour. It was a combination of working with the guitars, bass, drums, the usual sort of culprits, again with the pianos later on coming in the keys up on that upper register. It was more about the story that was being told and going through this adventure with someone, trying to find a place just to have a drink and everything like that. A place with this peace of mind and understanding the good things take time, etc. But we're getting towards that future that they're looking for, even though, as mentioned earlier in the album, it isn't necessarily a given. I kind of wonder if the reason this is at the end is because we're trying to suggest that the changes we made around that midpoint, like Scared of Changing, have led us to eventually get through this, whether it's through to a dissociation or something like that, or dissociation. But I also liked the mix in this one as well. I thought the vocals were well leveled and the rest of the elements, though while they were quite tight in the mix, they sat neatly. But we're going to talk about that more in the conclusion. And welcome to the conclusion of my review of this album from an act named Winchester 7 and the Runners, titled The Waking Giant, or as it's known on the 7-track version on Bandcamp, The Waking Giant of Echo's Rest. Now, what do I think this album is about? If I'm honest with you, like initially when I first started this, there was quite a lot to take in lyrically. 2 Feet on the Ground, well, to be fair, I couldn't get all the words through clearly. I promise I won't go on and on about that. It's just more like a situation where with what I got is like being grounded and trying to get to the finish line through that and not allowing yourself to get overwhelmed. Selling the apocalypse is like being reasonable or sort of like, I suppose, grounded about our own mortality and our future on this earth and trying to make the most of it. Not knowing whether it will or what, but just doing what we can within our control. On the pipeline, trying to cope with problems, whether through artificial means or with ourselves, trying to find solutions to those things, I suppose. Scared of Changing is maybe related to those artificial changes and coming to terms with the fact that the world is changing in a way that's for better or worse. We just got to try and find a way, even though you don't want to change, the other person is, and eventually they got to a point where they were going to change together or something like that. Stories to tell where I think there was a lady that came in, the guy and the lady started singing together and kind of coming to terms with they're going to write, make stories for themselves and try and make the most of the situation, even though things weren't necessarily great. They're going to give up that rebel yell and basically try and sort of do what they can to make the most of the situation. They were dreaming in color, understanding that things weren't great, and then going to that other place where like they dream about things being better and they dream about their origins and like who they are and etc. And so the self-idealization potentially, I'm not sure, but at least like a different alternative to what the current is. But dissociation being tricky because like for me, dissociation kind of suggested that we were completely trying to sort of remove ourselves from our reality, potentially for the better or worse. You got the feeling with the string changes near the end, with the flurries, and then like the kind of distorted, modulated, modded, the take with the fiddles and stuff near the end. I'm not sure what that track was, but you got the time sort of ticking out slowly that we disassociated, and that was maybe what caused the timer to run out, or maybe we just didn't do enough to be able to make the most of it, and eventually time ran out. But Not Dead Yet is potentially an answer to that, saying that, you know, even though like we were struggling with our situation, we're still here, we're still alive, we've still got time to make the most of things. You know, we might have holes in our clothes and we might smell of death and stuff like that, but at least we're still here, at least we can still make a stand. And Find Me a Place is maybe coming off of that and saying, hey, you know, I just want to find a place to kind of relax and kind of sort of recover and find a niche to be in, somewhere to be, because I know good things take time, but I'm happy to continue working to it until we get to that point. That is my understanding of it. Maybe that's a little bit kind of like out there. Maybe I'm completely off, but that's what I got from the story. So I think that's what the album is about. It's about that entire journey there. The vocals were solid. I didn't always get the vocals through clearly, but I think that we showed solid vocal technique and a head and chest voice there. The guy singer was really sort of comfortable in his vocal range. We had a nice personable tone to our voice there where we seemed very comfortable with a similar level of expression throughout, regardless of what we were talking about. That's fine. That's our kind of our singing voice. That's something we are happy with, and it suited the instruments and the subject matter of what we were discussing there. We didn't sing all the time, but when we did, it was worth listening to, not only for the storytelling, the lyrics, but also just because it was pleasant and palatable. Even if we're putting like effects in it, like we're putting radio filter vocals, or we're doing even some vocoder stuff later on, overdubs, like there was like one high and one low there. We had more presence in the mix in those situations, and the tracks we double tracked the vocals, I typically got the lyrics through more clearly, so I had more of an understanding of what was going on. So that's That was really good. The lady singer that came in, Stories to Tell, could also sing really well. They had solid vocal technique there, and they harmonized nicely with the male vocalist, and that was great. And then ultimately, you know, I've got no complaints about how things were sung or spoken. I thought that it was really, it was a good improvement. I've listened to Winchester 7 and the Runners before. I'm familiar with that voicing, and I'm happy with it. I thought it was. We've continued to put out quality stuff. Tracks, the 9 tracks, with understanding that one of them was again a cover from an act named Lord Huron. I thought that they were all handled rather eloquently there. They were typically between like 2 to 4, maybe 4 or 5 minutes for some of the bigger ones. That was enough time. There was no filler in any of them. We understood in some tracks that we needed to add extra lead layers onto choruses if we'd had too many times of the vocal hooks, you know. Some tracks, like I think it was Dissociation, we just had like 3 minutes of song and then like 1.5 of like the kind of crazy warp strings going into a different section where things become sort of modulated and kind of gritty. And then we had the clock ticking down, so that was the outro to the album. It made sense to kind of spice things up like that. I like the fact that some tracks like Scared of Changing were more sort of like traditional. We had verse chorus structures there with less. But some tracks had less dedicated lead elements. Some had specific focus on having more. Like I think it was Dissociation, like Dreaming in Color. Some tracks were so busy with the synths and the ukulele and guitar, bass, drum parts, and the vocal layers and everything like that. That was kind of overwhelming. There were some songs where I think even if like things had been like mixed and leveled in a way where all the tracks were the similar one and you could hear the vocals clearly and stuff, the arrangement would have been so busy. Like we wanted to really stuff the frequency spectrum chock-a-block full of various points in each sort of like sector there. We had lots a low end with the bass parts where typically they were sticking with the root notes there. The drums, they were solid. You know, like there was just some really solid performances there. We were comfortable with our quarters, eighths, and 16ths. We might add some triplets occasionally, but those were the mains we stuck with there. We kept a relatively minimalist approach a lot of the time there. We didn't try to do a huge amount of fancy stuff, and I think that was sort of more to be supportive of the band that we were working with, as well as the singer there. The guitarist, you know, like the guitar tracks were typically revolving around sort of picked parts or chords, maybe octaves, or like picked lead parts or some interesting pentatonic lead phrasings, typically revolving around the blues or like the major or minors here. We stayed away from extensions. We might have had some dominance, but I'm not sure. But ultimately, you know, they were fairly easy to sort of like understand and get behind. There wasn't a lot of nuance there with extensions or anything like that beyond that to kind of peter things out. Although we had some interesting chord changes where we went to an unpredictable chord. Like I think Dreaming in Color, that was really satisfying going to that major in that second section there. There were other songs I think where we had, that's the chord. We didn't have any key changes or anything like that. We didn't try to do anything sort of fancy with the switch ups of the existing progressions we had there. The vocals were typically the focal point. We didn't stray away from them too much. I thought the keys that we had, Not Dead Yet and Find Me a Place, were kind of dope there. The honky tonk keys there on the right hand, glittering around the harper register there. They're really pretty, accenting certain parts of the triads in that range. It was nice sort of niching in the frequency spectrum there. I thought that the synths that we had in some parts were kind of dope there. We had some interesting synth pads, some key parts there, which were kind of electronic and blah, blah, blah. We found fun sounds to add that were not in all the tracks. They were usually per track in the same way that like the ukulele, for example, wasn't all the time. You know, we had the ukulele in some tracks, not others, like in the first, but not in the second there. We understood, I think, what we wanted to do in regards to having the tones we wanted from the instruments, and we knew where to put them in the stereo field and stuff like that. And I think there weren't any parts where the notes were wrong or the chords were wrong or anything like that. It was ultimately just a situation where I think we were just trying to have big bombastic pieces of music, and we succeeded almost to a detriment in certain respects with the production, which I'll talk about. I've already talked about it already, but the compositions, all 9 of them were satisfying and rewarding to listen through. They were varied. No track was the same. They had a great sense of uniqueness and individuality to them. I'm very thankful for that, as the last thing we need is for 9 tracks to all sound the same. I think the last 8 and 9 were bonus tracks. They were great additions, and I can only surmise that they add more context to the story added in the beginning. I personally feel as if Dissociation is a very stark ending there. I'm glad if it does follow on with those bonus tracks that we have a bit more to kind of edge it out. Not that I need things to sound sweet and pretty all the time, but it's more of a situation where it's like I don't want things to sound like we're trying to be too sort of menacing there. We had some really beautiful components in this album, and it was just kind of a bit sad to end things like that, I suppose. So I'm glad that we had 8 and 9 there, even though artistic expression is totally valid and we don't have to be nice all the time. It's just the clock ticking out was just a bit sad. It's like a horror movie that actually ends badly. But ultimately, you know, I think that's also to indicate stuff they're talking about in the lyrics, and that makes sense too. That's fine. In that regard, I think most of the tracks had themes that related well to the lyrics and the vocals that were being sung there. We had a great sense of cohesion and synergy between the ingredients within the mixes and the arrangements, the chord choices, the rhythms, the various like the melodies, and the performances were quite tight. And we had it was solid. It's really good. I appreciate what we've done here. I think it's a good effort. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering, though, it's like a situation where the only thing I'd say, as I've said a few times, and this will be the last time I say it, I swear, there was just not enough dynamic range in certain tracks. Things were too squashed between the loud and the quiet parts there. So the vocals weren't as resonant. Some of the synth and guitar parts are a bit tight, etc. Outside of that, I think, given that level of dynamic range we had, it was things were nicely leveled in the frequency spectrum, you know, and in the mix in general. Given that, we did the best we could with that. You know, like it's worth noting that 8 and 9. I think 8 and 9 were handled a bit better doing it. Maybe they were done later on. So I think that the vocal leveling for 8 and 9 was a bit cleaner than the previous parts of the album. But I thought, you know, given that there were no weird resonant frequencies in the frequency spectrum, you know, nothing poking out. Things were nice wide in the stereo field. Sometimes when things were panned to the left, like the vocals, or the right, or like things would kind of spin between the sides of the stereo field. That was kind of dope. I appreciated that. There was even some parts where the track got wider in the stereo field, you know, and we had ample, like lots of different vocal effects, lots of different guitar effects and stuff like that. We really played well in post and made some really special music. It's worth noting, without a solid performance and without solid songwriting, you know, I said solid a lot, without really good quality songwriting and performances, you wouldn't have that. So, you know, it wouldn't be enough. So I'm glad that we had the boxes ticked there. You know, I think this has been mostly a positive review. I feel as if I'm missing nuance with the lyrics, but I've said that a lot of times, and it's just how it is. Maybe on a second listen basis, I get it, but I think it's fair to, yeah, I'll step away from that. It's a contentious thing. You know, it's okay to have replay value. Some genres kind of rely on it, but you know, like basically, this is my review of this album from an act named Winchester 7 and the Runners, titled "The Waking Giant." You know, hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via the various social medias, via the you know, this will be on all digital streaming platforms soon, as well as I presume on their website. And stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians. I know at this point in time, as you need to help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next review. Spiderhands out.